So, ma'am, can I start?
Please start, kariye.
On behalf of Science City, I warmly welcome you all to this webinar on World Wetlands Day. As you all know, World Wetland Day is celebrated each year on 2nd of February to mark the signing of the Convention on Wetland, that is Ramsar Convention. It was occurred in Ramsar, Iran in 1971. In 1981, Chilka Lake in Odisha was designated the first Indian wetland of international importance under the Ramsar site. Presently, we have 47 wetlands that are covered under Ramsar sites. In Punjab, we have 6 out of them. Earlier, Punjab had 3 wetlands designated as Ramsar site that were Harika, Ropar, Kanjli. Recently, in 2020, 3 more were added that are Keshapur, Nangal, and Byas River. This year, the World Wetlands Day theme is Wetlands Action for People and Nature. Today, we have with us the renowned environmentalist, Professor C.K. Varshney, former Dean and Professor Emeritus, School of Environmental Sciences from Jawaharlal Nehru University, New Delhi, for expert lecture. So before starting, now I request Dr. Nilima Jarrett, Director General, Pushpa Gujarat Science City, to share her views. Dr. Nilima Jarrett, she's double gold medalist and a state awardee for her work in science and environment. Prior to joining as DG Science City, she was the Executive Director, Punjab State Council for Science and Technology, and founder member secretary of State Biodiversity Board and State Innovation Council. She's instrumental in establishing the Patent Information Center, Climate Change Knowledge Center, Invest Center, and Regional Center for Education and Sustainable Development. Pushpa Gujarat Science City received the National Award for Science Communication in 2018 under her leadership. Now I request ma'am to please share this. Ma'am.
Thank you, Dr. Bhalla, and a very good afternoon, everybody. Very good afternoon, Dr. Varshney. Extremely sorry for this. We are starting the program late today. I apologize to everybody, but there were some network issues which resulted into that, something which was beyond our control. But then when all is well, which ends well. And we have finally Dr. C.K. Varshney with us. Dr. C.K. Varshney is one of the leading authorities on wetlands in India, and he was the one who had represented the country along with the Ministry of Environment and Forests at the Ramsar Convention. Also, a very good afternoon to all the participants, the academicians, the researchers, the students from colleges, some students, senior students from schools. A very warm welcome to all of you, and indeed it is a pleasure and a great honor for Science City to have Dr. Varshney with us today. Well, friends, if you look at the map of India, you would find it dotted with a lot of water bodies. And if you go to any village in India, you would find at least 1 or 2 water bodies in every village. So that is the importance of water in our lives. And wetlands, these water bodies, these wetlands provide an important habitat for flora and fauna to survive in our ecosystem. And hence it is so very essential that these are always very well protected. We have had a tradition of protecting our water bodies, and we still need to follow that. If we talk about Punjab, its name itself is based on Aab, or water. And we have several natural and man-made wetlands. Just now, Dr. Bhalla told us that we have 6 Ramsar sites in the country. It was way back in 1984 when Dr. Salim Ali visited the Harike wetland. And that is how the importance of wetlands came to be known into political circles, into administrative circles, and the state actively started working in the area of wetland protection in 1984. In 1987, I started working in this area in 1988, and we worked very closely with the Wildlife Institute of India and the WWF India, and the first Ramsar site of Punjab was declared. Harike was declared as the first Ramsar site in 1990. Since then, we have added 5 more Ramsar sites, and these sites provide home to species like the Indus River dolphin, which is a rare species. It provides home to the smooth Indian otter, especially at the Harike wetland. At the Kanjli wetland, we have an interesting plant, Utricularia, which is an insectivorous plant. Punjab is known for its bird species. We have more than 400 species of birds which are found in the state, and a majority of them, especially the migratory birds, are all found in and around our wetlands. Sir, I would like to tell you that last year we started a small survey of our own 72-acre campus, which is a small campus, but within that, in 2 seasons, we could record more than 65 bird species. So that is the importance of birds in our life, and that is the importance of wetlands around us. I extend a very, very warm welcome to Professor Varshney. He has been a guide and a mentor since many, many years. I think, sir, we met first in 1994 or something. And since then, it has been a pleasure interacting with you, learning from you. And I hope that in today's talk, our younger students would get an opportunity to hear you and to learn from you. So I would not like to come between you and the audience. We are already late. So I hand over the platform to Kamal to please welcome Dr. Varshney, introduce Dr. Varshney formally. Thank you.
So before starting, I'm just reading out the brief profile of Professor Varshney. Professor C.K. Varshney is former Dean and Professor Emeritus at School of Environmental Sciences, JNU, New Delhi, and a distinguished professor at Asian Institute of Technology, Bangkok, and a member governing body of Wetland International, South Asia. He has also taught at BHU, DU, IGNO, TERI, etc. He was the founder secretary of the National Committee on Environment Planning and Coordination, which was the apex policy and planning body in the government for all the environmental matters prior to the formation of Ministry of Environment. He was member secretary of Indian delegation to historic 1972 UN Conference on Human Environment at Stockholm, and participated at first and second UNP Governing Council meeting at Geneva and Nairobi. He was leader of Indian delegation to Conference of Parties of Ramsar Convention held at Netherlands in 1984. He was founder secretary, National Committee of UNESCO Man and Biosphere Program. He was chairman of Environment Research Committee of Ministry of Environment and member of National Wetland Authority. He is a recipient of Swami Pranavananda Saraswati Award for Environmental Sciences and Ecology and Vaspik Award of Environmental Science and Technology. He has authored many books and published research papers in leading international journals. So, welcome, sir. Today, the topic of his presentation is importance of wetlands for human welfare. Now, I request Professor Varshney to please start your presentation, sir.
Science City, please upload Dr. Varshney's presentation.
Ji, ma'am, we are doing. You are on mute. Please unmute. Sir, please unmute.
हाँ जी, हो गया सर.
हाँ, Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Bhalla, for inviting me on this day, which is so important. And I am very thankful to Dr. Neelam Jairath for reviving our association after a long time. And I'm indeed very sad that we are starting it late because of the technological hiccup. But nonetheless, since the day is so important and wetlands are superly important, and therefore I will first of all congratulate all the participants who have joined for their patience. And I'm sure that the kind of interest that they have shown in waiting for this lecture speaks very highly for the future and welfare of the wetlands, which have so far remained highly unrecognized and undervalued. And technology also seems to be playing its game so that the wetland lecture has been delayed, which should have not been so if the technological hiccup was not there. Anyway, the next slide. Now, what are wetlands? Since many students have joined, so just to put everybody on the same platform, let me just recall the definition of the wetland, which many of you may already know. Wetlands are wet areas where there is a layer of water and the soil is saturated with water. And they are defined as wetlands are areas where water covers the soil or is present either or at near the surface of the soil all year or for varying periods of time during the year, including during the growing season. Wetland may support both aquatic and during the dry phase, they may even support the terrestrial species. So I think that these are some of the very interesting ecosystems which change their, please hold on, previous slide, which change their character as the seasons march. During the rainy season, they are full of water. They collect water because of the gravitational flow and because of the topographical features of the land. If the water and the depth of the place where water is collecting is enough, the water can survive the harsh winter, harsh summer. But even if it is dries up, it then becomes a terrestrial place, and then the terrestrial species of plants, etc., can grow. And again, the cycle can repeat with the summer, with the onset of the rainy season. So I think that some wetlands will remain completely underwater, some will remain for part of the year of the water, and still others, and so on. So I think it is not necessary that a wetland should have water always. It could be for one season, or it can be more than one season, or it can be for the whole year. So I think this is very clear that all wetlands need not have water all the time to be called as wetland. Next. Wetlands are very elite ecosystems. Among the various ecosystems in the world that we have, wetlands are the most elite ecosystem. And the reasons are very straightforward. Wetlands are the most productive ecosystems on the earth. That is, we have got forest, we have got grasslands, we have got, I think, the grassland, and you have got the deciduous forest, and you have got many others. And I think the wetlands amongst all these are most productive. You have even the cultivated fields, and wetland productivity is either exceeds or matches the very hardly maintained agriculture system. So the agriculture systems are maintained because of the hard work, because of the heavy input, but wetlands receive zero input, and yet they are able to meet very comfortably or even excel the agricultural fields. So wetlands are currently cover globally 6% of the Earth's surface. Now, this is very clear that wetlands are very small in entity. And you know, those things which are very small are very precious. And I give you one example from your own body. The pituitary glands are very small, but they control the whole metabolism of your body. So I think wetland total area being small control the global phenomena in a very significant and a very dominant way. And we shall see that in the future slides. They can be freshwater or they can be saltwater. They are inland or coastal. They could be natural or man-made. So I think any and everywhere, a body of land, when covered is water, whether it is salt or whether it is inland or whether it is coastal, they are all wetlands. And on that basis, we can divide the wetlands into broad three categories: freshwater wetlands, rivers, lakes, pools, floodplains, peatland, marshes, and swamp. Now, rivers are also wetlands. So I think let us understand that anything, whether flowing or static, which covers and remains underwater is a wetland. So rivers are one type of wetlands. And this is what the global community has agreed when they have appended their signature to a global treaty, which is known as Ramsar Convention. So I think let us understand that the scope of wetland is very wide. And rivers, lakes, pools, and they are all different varieties of wetlands. Saltwater wetlands include estuaries, mudflats, saltwater marshes, mangroves, lagoons, coral reef, shellfish, and reefs. So mangroves are actually wetlands, but oftentimes they are snatched because of their richness and because of the high productivity, and the foresters try to include them as a forest and also justify them since they support large number of trees as well. So I think wetland need not only have aquatic plants, but they can have large trees as well. So I think in a true sense and in a real sense, mangroves are actually wetlands. Now, human-made wetlands also include fish ponds, rice paddies, reservoirs, and saltpans. So if you include all the rice paddies around the world, including the whole Southeast Asia, where rice is a very major crop, you will find that the percentage of wetland processes which support the human beings becomes very, very substantial and dominating. But when we talk of wetland, we simply talk of wetland and the birds. So I think when we talk wetland and bird alone, we restrict the scope and we undervalue the wetland in a very significant way, which we have been doing all these years. And that is the reason that wetlands have not received the attention and the value that they deserve in a true manner. Next. Wetlands support rich biodiversity. I think Dr. Neelam has very rightly pointed out that they are very special species. Either they are threatened or they are rare, are supported by wetlands. Wetlands support those plants which land cannot support, and therefore they are special. Wetlands support those plants which require wetland or a water phase to complete their reproductive cycle. Wetlands support those organisms which use the resources of the wetland for their survival during the critical period or even during the normal period. So those which live inside the wetland, those which float over the wetland, and those which never float or live in the wetland but are dependent on wetland are also wetland dependent biodiversity. So I think this point is very clear, that not only what is contained within the parameter of the wetland are the wetland dependent organisms, but those who are not really residing within the wetland, but visit wetland to meet their day-to-day requirement and their survival requirement are also dependent on the wetland, and wetland supports them. Minus wetland, their survival is also cannot be imagined. And this we will learn very soon. Now, 40% of the world's plant and animal species live or breed in wetland. Now, as I have mentioned, natural wetlands are only 6%, but they hold 40% of the biodiversity. So you can see that what a large congregation of biodiversity is supported by this small area of. So if biodiversity or the global biodiversity has to be protected, I think the first priority has to be given to the wetlands, because it is they which are the biggest repository of the gene pool of the global biodiversity. Over 1 lakh or 100,000 freshwater species have been identified in wetlands so far. Many of them are at risk, such as amphibians and reptiles, migratory and resident water birds, thousands of plant species, endemic species, that is the plants or animals or phytoplanktons or invertebrates which are found only in wetlands and nowhere else. And the coastal wetlands, especially, are among the most biologically diverse places which we have, which are one type of wetland, that is the coastal wetland. Particularly the corals and atolls, they are very, very important. Next. Now you see that how beautiful and different kind of things are present and supported by wetland. These are duckweeds or water fern. So I think there in this picture, you are seeing 3 or 4 type of aquatic floating plant. One is lamna, which is having on your left-hand side that you can see, and then very dotted pin, I think pinhead type of thing. And one of the finger is showing them in the center. And each one of this dot is a full plant. And if you look under the microscope, you will find that each one can be seen to be showing a flower inside and so on. And then you have on your right-hand side, some dark color thing. These are the floating aquatic fern, that is azolla, which is highly prized biofertilizer, and spirodilla, another duckweed, which the birds eat and enjoy, and they really serve their food. So I think these are some of the organisms. By the way, Wolffia is the smallest flowering plant of the world. So I think this is a distinction that the wetlands have to support a plant which is the smallest in the world and which is a flowering. Next. I will just show you some. Now, these are some of our migratory waterfowl or winter visitors. And you can see that what kind of a teeming flocks are there which are enjoying a very safe North Indian winter, and they come from far off places, Kazakhstan and Siberia and so on, where at this moment of time, it is all covered under, there is very little to eat, so they migrate. So these are the international travelers which do not seek any visa or permission, but they come and they live with us. They grow and they survive. And with the onset of the summer, where water starts drying out, they again migrate to their winter homes or their summer homes, you can say. So I think every year they come and go, they come and go. So I think it is a very, very significant. So if you drain out your wetlands, so what will happen that this international resource on which no country can claim, because they are sometimes here part of the year, about 5 months, and sometimes they are there. So I think they do not belong to any country, but they are international resource, so they will not survive. So I think that the Wetland Convention was initially thought of conserving these waterfowl. But since then, much water has flown, and the very many new and far more important properties and advantages of the wetlands have been discovered, and they continue to be discovered. Not that we know everything, but I think their potential is still being explored, and new dimensions of their value is being described and being laid bare. And we will discuss that very shortly. So I think these are the very, very important sites internationally, which support this international, I should say, common set of migratory birds. And other than, there are a large number of resident aquatic birds which permanently make wetlands as their home. Now, India receives about 100 species of migratory birds. And in Punjab, I think 87 species of migratory birds have been reported. Over the years in Harike, over 1 lakh migratory birds really come. This year, of course, they are a little less. And one of the reasons for that is a large amount of petroleum exploration, which is taking place in Siberia under the control of Russians and so on and so forth. So I think their habitats are getting disturbed. So this is one such factor which might be operating, that why we are getting less number of these birds, why we have received less number of birds this year as well as last year, that is in 21. There could be some more reasons because of the pollution of the water bodies and so on that may also have contributed for their reduced number. Next. Now, these are some of the land animals as we know, and they are the star attraction for wildlife tourism. And all of them visit wetlands. Their daily needs and quota for water is only on the basis of wetlands. The biggest animal that you can think of, including giraffes, elephants, deer, all the ungulates, they come regularly to the wetland. Minus wetland, their survival is not possible. In our tiger reserves, in order to really see that tiger reserves, and the tiger reserve become comfortable for our tiger, Asian Bengal tiger, I think water holes are artificially created so that their water requirement and their support system could be made secure. And here you see, and which is a common sight in all villages of the country, and particularly so in Punjab, where the buffalo bathing and wallowing in the wetland is an important activity and a common sight. And it is only this which really ensures an sustainable supply of the milk from the cattle, both buffalo and the cow. So I think that wetlands support not only the phytoplankton, the birds, but even the large animals like these. Next. And the corals, I think they are very colorful. And they are actually packed with various species. In fact, it is the corals which are the early, I should say, nurseries for the fisheries of the high seas. So I think the marine fisheries, they depend on the fingerlings which live in the secure environment of these corals. And as they become fingerlings, then they migrate to a larger arena and become and grow in the oceans and in the high seas. So I think if these things were not there, which are the corals and atolls, I think the primary care of the, I should say, egg and subsequently fingerling would have not been possible because of the vagaries of the high seas and because of the harsh environment of the high seas. Next. Now, the working of wetland is very important. we must understand that wetlands are integral part of the global water cycle. So if wetlands are not cared for, punctured, degraded, destroyed, or eliminated, you are gradually putting an X on the water cycle of your area. And water is such a prime requirement of human beings for their personal survival, for their hygiene, and for their industrial and urban development, that without water, impossible to survive. And if they play such an important link in the water cycle, then it is only because of our own interest that with great care we should protect our wetlands. Wetlands, because of the gravitational force, contribute to the groundwater and also contribute the flow of the river downstream. And this diagram illustrates it very, very clearly. Wherever there is a stagnating pool of water, they support the biodiversity, the birds, the plants, the animals, the amphibians. And all these organisms which grow in the wetland provide valuable goods and services. So wetland, including artificially constructed reservoir and underground aquifer, are the world's freshwater stores. So if we need water, if we are dependent on water, then I think water sources must be properly secured for our well-being. Wetlands are all connected, and the good and bad impacts of human intervention, particularly wetlands, in particular wetlands, are often felt throughout the river basin. So if you really destroy or create pollution to any one wetland, I think the river system and the downstream water bodies, including the aquifer, are going to get the signature of our misadventure in terms of pollution and in terms of high, I should say, the conductivity or the soil content. Next. So I think one thing is very clear, that wetlands are not discrete bodies. They are part of a much larger system, and they are well connected. Now, because of the activity that are taking place, because of the biodiversity that is present in these wetlands, number of wetland values are provided by this interaction of the organisms. Wetland harvest rain, they harvest rain. They are water harvesting structures, and they are very zero cost structure to harvest water. And you know, today you have to spend money to harvest water, and here is the natural harvesting system. They store water during the non-rainy period, and they purify water because the organisms take up phytoplankton and others take up the high dosage of nutrients which flow from the landscape into the water bodies along with floods. Wetland recharge groundwater, that everybody knows, delay the onset of drought because of the wetland is present. Maybe that the water has evaporated, but before doing so, they have already delayed the onset and the period of the drought. So I think that is very important for the landscape sustainability. Wetlands support aquatic biodiversity. I think I have already emphasized that. Wetland help control of erosion, because if the landscape is really along with the flood water coming with the silt, then wetland is a place where it gets deposited and not allowed to move forward. So I think this is one such activity in which the water gets purified. At the same time, silt is not allowed to go and destroy the water quality for the downstream communities. Wetlands help control erosion. Wetlands provide aquatic food and fodder for livestock. Wetlands provide raw materials used for making handicrafts. Wetlands encourage water sports and provide opportunities for recreation and education. Wetlands generate livelihood and contribute to the local economy. And collectively, the economy of all wetlands contribute to the state economy, and so on and so forth. And we will learn about it a little later with few more slides. Next. Ramsar Convention on Wetland, as Dr. Neelam has already mentioned to you, it was in 71. It was signed in the city of Ramsar in Iran, where there is a very large wetland. And the global treaty is the only treaty, and perhaps is the first environment treaty that was concluded in 1971. India is party to the Ramsar Convention. India signed this treaty on 1st February in 1982. So I think you can see that 1982 and now we are 2020. So I think there is a considerable number of decades that now we are party to this convention, and we agree as a government. It is our commitment to the definition of the Ramsar Convention. So I think let us understand that all wetlands, whether we call them lake and this and that, primarily they are wetlands and their varieties. Now, contracting parties committed to all the member states or the countries which are party to this convention, which are 171 at present, must designate wetland of high value. Please mind this very carefully. Must designate high value wetland on the list of wetland of international importance. This is one requirement. And Punjab has joined in 91, as I understand from Dr. Neelam Jairat, that it was in 91 that they have joined or declared or whatever it is, finally got declared the Hariki as a wetland of international importance. 71 and 91 decade, there is a time span of 2 decades to really get this done, to which we were committed as early as 71 or 82 when India committed. So you can see the kind of delay. And all this delay is because of our underappreciation of the value of wetland and their significance, which runs through the entire administrative system and the wetland governance system. Since then, not only in India, but globally, because of our poor understanding and for historical reasons, which I will share with you shortly. Use of wetland wisely and cooperate on transboundary issues. There are certain wetlands which are really covering more than 2 countries, or they cover the 2 countries. For example, in our case, we have got Sundarbans, where part of Sundarban is in India and part of Sundarban is in Bangladesh. And I think both countries have to cooperate, because if any one of the countries starts degrading them, polluting them, then I think entire wetland is gone, because they don't recognize national boundaries. So I think the parties which share the wetlands must cooperate, maybe the river or maybe a wetland, so that they maintain the interest and the integrity of the wetland, rather than being very, very selfish of making use of their only portion of the wetland or degrading them or whatever it is. So I think this is another requirement. And the number of Ramsar sites at present, which have been declared by the various governments of the world, number of them are now 2,300, and they cover a huge number of acreage. And this is the current status of this. Now, this does not mean that other wetlands are of no value. I think perception is this, that unless the wetland on the international Ramsar site, the wetland doesn't require that much of attention. I think this is a kind of understanding to which we should completely now divorce. All wetlands, small or big, are equally important in respect of their location, in respect of their specific sites, and in respect of the community that they serve close to those sites. So I think let us very clear that it is not only the international is fine, that is serving at one purpose. So what is good at the international level may not be good at the national level, and what is good at national level may not be good at the state level, and what is good at the state level need not be good at a village level. So I think let us understand that what is good at village level may not become very significant at the national level. So I think all these, we have to respect all these levels, and we have to respect all wetlands, small or big, permanent or temporary, natural or artificial. Next, and I will give you more reasons for you to trust and believe in this kind of a situation. Next. Next slide, please. Now, Indian wetlands, as you know, ISRO for the first time at our great insistence, to which I served as an advisor at that time, for the first time surveyed the wetlands using satellite imagery. And they come up with large number of wetlands and have mapped in 1:50,000 scale and has prepared a wetland map of the country, or wetland atlas, as they call it. And they have identified that 55,557 wetlands. And these are the wetlands which are more than 2.25 hectares, because the resolution was a limitation after that using this technology at that time when this atlas was prepared. So I think now we have got about 2 lakh and 5 lakhs, so over 7 lakh wetlands. And the large number of them, that is 5 lakh, over 5 lakh, or 5.5 or 55 lakhs, they are just shown as dots, because detailing was not possible using the kind of technology of remote sensing that was available at that time. Total wetland area was estimated as 15.26 million hectare, which is around 4.63% of the geographical area of the country. Excluding rivers, this excludes rivers, wetlands cover some 10 million hectares, or a little over 3% of the country's geographical area. So I think this is something, as we know from the ISRO survey. But these are very useful estimates, but nonetheless, they present a complete picture of the wetlands. Reason, we will understand. Next. Let us take the case of Punjab as an illustrated point. According to this atlas of ISRO, Punjab has 1,381 wetlands mapped at 1:50,000 scale. In addition, they have reported 5,049 small wetlands, which are smaller than 2.25 hectares. I think this is fine, because with the technology they have used and with the kind of wherewithal that was available, this was possible. The total wetland area was estimated to be 8,62,083 hectare, accounting for 1.7%. So I think Punjab, where the water is so critical an issue, the wetland percentage is very small. It is alarming, and I think it requires some kind of discussion and some kind of, I should say, concern. Punjab has declared wetland as Ramsar site, which are now 6, and you already know about it. In addition, as per Indian census, please come and think about it. This is more important. In addition to, as per Indian census in 2001, Punjab has more than 12,270 inhabited villages, according to the statistical abstract of Punjab of 2006. They may have been little more now, I don't know. each village has at least one village pond. And it is estimated that the total village ponds in Punjab are more than 15,000. And it is also estimated that 15% of these have been nibbled, encroached, and degraded. While there is a great problem of water in Punjab, and here you see that water storage systems have not been cared for. So I think this is something on which not only Punjab, but all states and the country as a whole has to think. It is not the large wetland and the showy wetland and elite wetland which are of critical value. They are very important for wildlife tourism or those people who want some kind of a leisure tourism to this place. But actually, for the day-to-day working and for the population of the country, all wetlands are critically important and are serving very, very useful work wherever they are located. These are the decentralized system of water storage, which is achieved at a zero cost by the country. Next. I'm quite conscious of the time and I will try to finish as early as possible because I know that the audience has been waiting. Now, wetland loss has been enormous. Throughout the history, wetlands have been viewed, this is a historical fact, as wasteland. Even today, they remain undervalued and their potential is seldom appreciated. About 87% of the Indian wetlands worldwide has disappeared since 1700. This is what the Wetland Bureau has estimated. In just last 50 years, since 1970, 35% of the world wetlands have been lost. Wetlands are disappearing 3 times faster than the forest or deforestation, the global deforestation. So I think the wetlands are the most threatened, they are the most elite, and they are the most threatened ecosystems of the world. In fact, in last 5 decades, 81% of the inland wetland species, that is plants, animals which are found in the wetland, and 36% of the coastal marine species have declined. So you can see that the functionaries of the wetland, the residents of the wetland, their number is also decreasing very rapidly. Human activities that lead to the loss of wetland, including drainage, next slide, next. Now, apart from the various other mismanagement or abuse, it is the alien species or these kind of noxious weeds which are also destroying our wetland. And the most important in the Indian context, and as well as in the context of Punjab, is the water hyacinth. Hariki having a lot of problem with water hyacinth. And water hyacinth deteriorates our wetland very significantly. And it is an imported plant. It is a plant which has come from outside its normal range of distribution and has occupied our water bodies in Punjab, entire North India, and the Northeast, as well as I think the all parts of the country. You find this as a big menace. And I think the people in Kashmir and in Srinagar, where we have got beautiful these landscape or the lake escapes, which attract people from all over the world, I think these plants are really a major source of a problem where the state has to put huge amount of labor and money and effort to get rid of them, but unsuccessfully. Next. Biodiversity is also in deep decline. Wetland species are declining. And I think since 1970, 81% of the inland wetland species and 36% of marine wetland species have declined, as per the Wetland Bureau or the Wetland Secretariat. 25% of wetland species are threatened with extinction. And I think some of these species were highlighted by Dr. Neelam Jairath already in her introductory remarks. including water birds, freshwater dependent mammals, marine turtles, coral reef building species, and so on. Next. The drivers of wetland loss and degradation. Conventionally, people talk of draining, over-extraction of water, pollution, overfishing, and invasive species. And the new factor, which is a global factor, but created by local action, is a climate change. So I think all these factors are creating a serious problem for the wetlands. Next. Wetlands are food factories and valuable economic assets. I think this part of the wetland virtue is never enough emphasized in any wetland documents. The entire saga of wetland starts with birds, talks about little bit of water and pollution, and ends up with birds. And we get completely feel exhausted. But I think the real value of wetland is that they are food factories and valuable economic assets. And I think this must be greatly appreciated. It is time to appreciate. I will say that the factors are such and the conditions are emerging that we will be forced to accept as this a stark fact. The plankton, freshwater fisheries, vegetables, rice, fruits and nuts and fodder, all provided by the wetland in enough quantity, year after year, if they are maintained and their integrity is not breached. Wetland provide livelihood for 1 billion people. It's not a small number. Wetland provide ecosystem services worth 47 trillion. Mind you, 47 trillion. And India wants to develop an economy of 5 trillion, for which I think the entire government is working very hard with startup and with Stand Up India and whatnot that we have. So you can see that what kind of value these assets have. Annually, mind you, annually more than those combined from forest, deserts, and grassland. So 6%, which are supposed to be, are really the one which dominate in providing you economic worth of 47 trillion annually. Mangroves and coral reef protect coastal communities during storm surges, hurricane, tsunamis, and reduce effectively loss of life and loss of property and infrastructure. So what is saved from loss is also the gain or the value added to the value of the wetland. So I think these are some of the dimensions which must be appreciated. In fact, Odisha has already appreciated, and therefore they are guarding their mangroves and are really enjoying the advantages of these mangroves in protecting themselves from the cyclones and the surges. Next. Andhra Pradesh also. Now, rice production in Punjab is a case in point, and which is very interesting. This year, rice yield is about 6,776. That is 6.63 tons per hectare, the highest yield ever. And I think Punjab leads the per acre yield of rice in the world, in the country. And the total rice that we have harvested, or which has been estimated that was harvested or is being harvested, is 188 lakh tons. Punjab produces 4% less paddy this year, but it is still 188. According to Agriculture Department, as per the result of 76% of crop cutting experiments, these are the statistical samples that are drawn, and you will find that 6.7 ton, and this is one of the highest yields that we have on record from the rice. And you can calculate the economic value of this, and you can calculate number of people that are involved in caring these aquatic plants. Rice is an aquatic plant. It grows under aquatic conditions. It uses aquatic processes to grow and give us the grain, which is not only that we are enjoying, our great ancestors have enjoyed, and we would like that our future generation should also enjoy this, provided we maintain the system which supports the aquatic processes, which leads to the significant production of these crops. Next. Other than this, we have got very high quality products also. Nuts, makhana is considered to be one of the finest food. And then chestnut. And then you have got these lotus roots or the stem. And you can see the chips. They are highly valued products. They have got high antioxidant contents, and they are considered to be the absolutely safe and very benevolent for our stomach and for our digestion. So you can see that they are also used in various rituals in the country for the value that they carry. They also have a very premier price. Their prices are very high, and they are easily stored, and they are in high demand. So I think these are the high value products. These are just few, but there are many that we can get, and we get from wetland and from nowhere else. It is only wetlands which grow them and nowhere else. So I think we should really, these are compelling reasons for us to conserve wetland. Next. Let us also look at Punjab Fisheries. The inland water fisheries, river, reservoirs, wetland, lakes, and ponds contribute 62 to 65% of the total fisheries production. Despite processing, that Punjab has no coastline, but it is the Punjab wetlands and water bodies which are capable of producing this. And the fish can be produced only when there is a static body of a certain amount of water over a piece of land. Of course, the farmer or the fisherman put his labor also, tries to artificially fertilize them also, but this fertilization made available for the fish to grow is only through the wetland processes, not otherwise. So in 2019 and 2020, Punjab produced 1.5 lakh tons of fish. Around 32,597 acres of Punjab is under fish farming, with 6 herbivore varieties, namely katla, rohu, mrigal, silver carp, and grass carp, and common carp ruling the ponds. The state has the distinction of producing the highest freshwater fish yield of 2,500 kg per hectare over the last few years. So I think that we are harvesting rich harvest from these aquatic systems, which we maintain artificially. And the wetland definition of the Ramsar site says very clearly that even the artificial sites or artificial wetlands are wetlands or a type of wetlands. Next. Now, groundwater situation in Punjab is very precarious, and the Niti Aayog report reminds us, without mincing the word, and one of the studies carried out by an IIT states that the state of Punjab and Haryana are the worst affected regions, and the study led by Professor Rajiv Sinha and Sunil Kumar Joshi at IIT Kanpur shows that shallow groundwater fell from 2 meters below the ground level during 1974 to 30 meters below ground level in 2010. Now, if the water level is so deep, then the amount of energy that you have to spend to lift this water is obviously much more, and all this added to the cost of cultivation. So if we are able to maintain wetlands, I think this kind of compulsorily punishable cost of cultivation of rice will be greatly reduced. The treasury will be reduced, the investment, the capital investment will be reduced, and the energy will be reduced, so that the carbon emission, which is attributed for lifting water will also vanish. And this will straight result into economic profit. Creeping towards permanent drought. Punjab and Haryana are creeping towards permanent drought. I think this is something that we have to be alert. Punjab and Haryana are likely to turn into desert in 25 years. And I only wish that this doesn't happen. And here you see that the source of water in the country, not only in Punjab, in the country, with 80% of the population is dependent on nothing but groundwater. So the groundwater is so critical for the human beings, for our crops, for our fish, and for everything. We must, and in future, its demand is going to increase. And it is getting polluted also, wherever it is available. So I think now the time has come to really think wetlands out of box and realize the very high potential of human welfare that they have. Next. Wetland and climate change are very close. In fact, wetlands are a solution to the climate change. Wetlands are some of the largest carbon reservoirs of the earth, as per Ramsar briefing note recent. Wetlands are estimated to store more than 1/3 of the world's terrestrial carbon. It's not the forest, it's the wetland. Their destruction often results in major release of greenhouse gases to the atmosphere. If they are drained and if they are exposed, then this organic matter, which they have within their belly or within the substratum, gets oxidized and releasing into carbon dioxide. So they become not a sink, but become a source. Wetlands are planet's most effective carbon sink and represent unrealized potential for climate mitigation. Coastal wetland, mangrove, tidal flats, and seagrass beds, now being referred to as blue carbon ecosystem, play an important role in carbon sequestration. Peatlands cover 3% of our planet and yet store approximately 30% of all land-based carbon. So you can see that what a human service the wetlands provide to us and what a kind of, I think, say, participation they have in the global carbon cycle. So most of the effort in the climate change is focused on minimizing carbon emission rather than giving much consideration or deserving consideration equally or even more to the wetlands, which are so active and which are so critical in the carbon cycle, global carbon cycle. The current effort to create net zero, which was discussed at the Glasgow meeting on the 26th, this GEO committee of the parties, can be secured if the wetlands can also be secured. So I think the net zero objective, wetlands can contribute. Not that they are alone capable, but they will have a very significant contribution in achieving net zero objective. Next. Mangroves are our coast guards. I have already mentioned that they prevent the coastal erosion by surges, tsunamis, and so on and so forth. No amount of military deputation can hold the soil from marine erosion. No amount of artificial infrastructure can hold the coastline from these natural forces. But wetlands do it very, very effectively, unassumingly, and without effort at zero cost. At the same time, provide valuable resources to the community, to the local economy, and to the people. Next. Wetlands also provide resources for social upliftment, particularly for women liberation, for articles, for art, and for creativity. And here you can see that these ladies, which are not living very far from Hariki, have started using this. Kettle, which is a wetland plant, and creating all kinds of these artificial or artifacts, which are of great utility and also which are lasting because they grow in water. So the chappals and so on, if they are really used in a situation which is wet and so on, they last for a long time. So here you can see that they provide not only the satisfaction of the and encourage the artistic taste of the people, engage them, but at the same time provides a cultural value and economic value and some kind of independence, as well as add to the family value, family economic, I think say, status or earning. And I think these are all very valuable. This is not food, this is not rice, this is not fish. These are all something for which there is no use and available at zero cost and can be turned into useful articles. Next. Wetlands and human welfare. I hope that I have been able to give you in short, very quickly, in a running manner, the kind of wetland services that we use and how their security is actually the security of human welfare. Wetland security is a key to the India's food security. Wetland enhance water security and play a role in coping with drought enhances resilience to climate shocks. Since independent species and look for water connection, it is not an option. I mean, conserving wetland is not an option. I think it is an imperative, and we must appreciate this. And the time has come that we will be forced to appreciate, because simply conserving wetlands and protecting their integrity in a religious and in a very devoted manner, we solve a large number of problems in one go. And the cost of doing so is the minimum, as well as provides economic sustenance and welfare. Next. Thank you very much for your patience, for the delay. I feel sorry. And Dr. Bhalla Saab, thank you very much again for inviting me and giving this opportunity of sharing some thoughts about wetlands.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks a lot, sir. And now it's time to take queries.
Sure.
So students, if you have any question, you can ask, and you can raise your hand or you can type the question in the chat box.
Before, as students prepare to raise their queries, I would like to add something. I would like to inform everybody that we have some very senior people who are associated with us today, and I welcome all of them. We have Dr. Paritosh Tyagi also with us today. So welcome, Dr. Tyagi. I saw you on the participant list here, and we have many, yes, sir. Thank you so much, sir. And we have many other senior people. Mr. Dilip Chatwal is there and many more. So welcome all of you who took time to participate in this. Thank you very much. And
Tyagi, namaskar.
Tyagi sir, before anybody else talks, I would like you to comment, because you have such a vast experience in the area of especially water.
I should speak the truth.
Yes, sir.
It was a wonderful class taken by a very worthy professor. And I can only say I was a good student listening to him with full attention.
Sir, I am obliged to you for your kind and humble words.
Thank you, sir. And sir, I would also like to add here, there were some very pertinent points which you raised. I would like to inform the participants, in addition to what you have said, for example, water hyacinth. Yes, it has been a very big problem, and it has not been only in Punjab, it has been all over India. And in late 90s, the government of India had started an integrated program. So they had given assignments to many of the organizations which were working on wetlands. And at that time, we in Punjab, we had invited, we in fact tried a lot of technologies, even tried to convert it into biogas, etc. But most of the things did not work because collection was always a very big problem. So sun drying was done and things like that. And then it led to the utilization of water hyacinth. And you showed some of the pictures of our women who were doing that in Harike. We also tried to do it in the Roped area. And well, the sustainability of these artifacts which they prepared is still an issue. Because they have actually not become very popular. They are okay, they are locally sold, but some of the organizations tried to export such things. They tried to find a market. But at the end of the day, let me give an honest comment that it has the sustainability of that has always been an issue for us. In fact, to collect water hyacinth, I remember in the Kanchli area, we had got constructed a log boom so that whatever water hyacinth comes from upstream area gets collected at the log boom. It acts as a barrier. But even whenever the flow was high, it would just float away. So these were some very important practical issues. And Keshopur Many, I would say that yes, sustainability of some of the operations was very nice there because we had used that area for growing of Urel ferox, that is Talmakhana, and also harvesting of Nilambium stem, which is a very popular vegetable in the area. So, and as it is water chestnut or trappa, that is otherwise also a very popular food in Punjab. So that is being harvested in most of the smaller wetlands, not in the larger ones. But yes, also regarding the fishes you mentioned, yes, these wetlands are a very good source of fish, and Punjabis are, I mean, they are more fond of chicken, but they are fond of fish as well. And but then at the same time, because of this problem with the wetlands, there are many species of fish. For example, mahseer is almost gone from the state. We have critically endangered, one species is critically endangered. 13 vulnerable fishes have been recorded from state wetlands. So all those issues are in the knowledge of the government, and yes, the Wetland Authority is now in place. So we hope things should improve. So by that time, any questions from our audience?
Yeah, ma'am. Mr. Dalip Chatwal has raised the hand. So yes, kindly unmute and ask your question. Mr. Dalip.
Hello, ma'am. May I ask a question?
Yes, sir.
Hello.
Please do.
Does there any ultraviolet impact on this wetland?
We didn't get your question, sir.
Rays. Does ultraviolet rays have impact on the wetland?
Well, I am not quite aware of that, but if I'm not failing in my general knowledge, the ultraviolet may not be in a very important factor unless, of course, the ozone layer gets again, which is now getting repaired. But if there is a problem of that, then there might be some problem. But I'm not quite sure myself, and would really like to know if you have any information on this, that how the ultraviolet is going to be a factor in the conservation of wetland and water.
Okay, thank you.
There's another question. Dr. Mandeep Kaur has raised hand. Dr. Mandeep? Dr. Mandeep, yes, please unmute. Please unmute.
Hello?
Yeah, please ask your question. You are audible.
Yes, my question is how we can remove Shawnee from the local ponds in the villages, because in my village every year the people they used to uproot it from the pond, but still in the next coming year there is any permanent.
I think this is a very important question, and many people are really busy in finding a permanent solution.
Yes, sir.
The problem with Eichhornia is that it is vegetatively propagated. So even if a small part is left, it quickly develops into a new plant. And another encouragement is provided to the growth of the water hyacinth is because the nutrient-rich effluent which flow from the village into the pond. So here is a situation. Unhindered inflow of solar energy, available of all the required nutrients, and plenty of water. And this is the most ideal situation, and the very comfortable temperature. So this is the most ideal situation for plants to grow. And since it propagates vegetatively, so when you pull the plant, then even a small portion is left from the rhizome or from the roots or the petiole side and so on. It develops into a new plant. So this is where the problem is. And that is a reason that one is saying that these are obnoxious weeds which are giving us a very tough time throughout the country for past many decades. We want a permanent solution, and the permanent solution will include stop putting too much of nutrient, particularly nitrogen and phosphate, which largely are from our human use effluents and the cattle use effluents, and keep a watch and ward throughout the year of pulling them and failing them in their vegetative reproduction, and thereafter securing them for no new infection to occur. So what I'm trying to say is that this may look very, I should say, a very, very, in the modern day technological age, a very old and a very unattractive solution. But I think this is it, that we have to engage one or two people in the village to keep a watch. So wherever a small patch appears, it is immediately put to rest rather than allowed to multiply and then take out. So before it becomes a very large visible, it is in the initial stages that they have to be carefully taken out without breaking them and destroyed.
Thank you, sir. And I hope Dr. Mandeep got the answer. There's another question in the chat box I would like to read. Sir, as you have said that Punjab, Haryana can be converted into desert, will convert into desert within next 25 years. What could be possibility for Rajasthan, as it is already kind of mostly desert state, and what could be the possible steps towards its welfare as a citizen, at the citizen level and at student level?
I couldn't get your name. Can you just pronounce your name again?
The question is from Purva.
Purva ji, your question is very nice, but I don't say that it is going to convert into desert. I'm saying that these are the warnings that are available in literature as well as in the reports of the people who have done some research and forecasting, looking at the trend at which the aquifer is depleting. And that is a reason. And it is no surprise, because there are many cities in the country as well as outside where the water become, or where there is a 0 water days that the city has experienced. So it is not going to be something. And it is very clear that with the global warming, temperature is going to rise, our water consumption and withdrawal will increase, and a situation will come where we will deplete the water, the aquifer completely. And it is not too long ago that we will find that there is no water available for our meeting our day-to-day needs. We have seen in past many wells going dry. It is not something new. It has happened in the past, and it is a common experience in many places where the aquifer has really gone down and so on, or has been depleted. So I think that these are some of the things which are likely to happen, not necessarily. So don't take 25 in a very literal sense, but the idea is in not too distant a future that the water situation will become a very big limiting factor. And wetlands contribute and offer as a solution to this if they are maintained and conserved.
Thank you, sir. And there's another question, though there's a question mark, but I don't find it to be a question. Rajesh Agnihotri has said that I think climate change is in fact enhancing energizing hydrological cycle, and this scenario would enhance spread of wetlands and opportunities for carbon capture.
Yes, I totally agree with Rajesh ji. The question is very nice, and I welcome this question. That because of the climate change, I think the water cycle has been greatly shaken. And now we find that in short period of time, there is very, very heavy downpour. And oftentimes it is resulting into floods in areas which in history, in the past, they have never experienced. So I think here is a situation that because of the large downpour, within a short period of time, the soil is unable to absorb and retain it. And thus, huge amount of runoff, and because of the gradient, it flows very fast. And the downstream communities, after it leaves the watershed, creates flooding. And finally moves into the river or into any stream, and thus carries and moves forward and keep on flooding. In this scenario, what wetlands can do? I think they can do and reduce this kind of a problem, if not solve them. Create more wetlands artificially. Hold water, because in the coming summer, you will not have any water, because all water that has come, which normally should have come gradually so that the soil is able to soak and deposit it in the aquifer. Now the same water comes in a very short period of time, doesn't allow time for the soil to really gravitationally soak this water, and thus it flows out. So you have high rainfall within a very short period of time. And as a consequence, the soil percolation doesn't, or there is a disconnect between rate of percolation and the amount of soil, or the rainfall that is available on the surface of the soil, and thus the flood. So if we are able to hold this water, and thus the wetlands can, post-rainy season or after the rain episode is over, they can keep on discharging water and keep pace with the infiltration rate and contribute and store water for the summer. So I think here is a prescription that wherever we have land available, where the crops cannot be grown and otherwise, possibility of holding water while creating wetlands is one such possibility. And wherever we are saying an organic kheti, which the Prime Minister and our current emphasis is on organic cultivation and so on, I think each holding should have its own pond of holding rainwater and harvesting it. And if that happens on a large scale and it becomes a participatory process, then I think considerable amount of rainfall, which is result into flood, can be contained. So flood fury can be reduced, and at the same time will strengthen our aquifer. But it requires convincing of the people, their cooperation, and considerable amount of popularizing the concept, discussing with people, convincing them, because after all, it is the participation of everyone, not only in terms of their labor and money, but also in terms of their allocating land for this particular type of use. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, sir. And we'll take one last question. Mr. Dilip wants to ask, is there any subsidy given by the state? I think he wants to ask that to revive the wetlands. Is there any subsidy given by the state for this purpose?
Well, there are certain funds that are available where they say that conserve wetland, and most of this goes in creating fancy boundaries and some kind of a arrangement for tourists to come and their, I think, facilitation and so on. But I think a more authoritative information Dr. Neelam Jairath can provide and enlighten us, as she has been a part of the government and knows that most of this money is given for wetland management plans. And I do not know what kind of management plans are these and how they have really functioned, and how much they have provided the success and achieved the intended purpose of such plans. So I think I will only say that not to an individual, but it is largely institutional, and which is given to the institutional organization, so on. This much I know, and the total funds available for wetland are very little, hardly any to really make them available on a large scale. Yes.
You are right. And when you ask for subsidy for what? That is the question. What do you need subsidy for? Because there is a state wetland authority, which is located in the Department of Forests and Wildlife. And I would suggest that you just go and see onto their website. Research funds some research funds are available, which are provided by the Ministry of Environment and Forests, their CS division, the Wetland Division. But as far as the state is concerned, yes, and also some funds are available to NGOs for promoting programs like the program in which some help was provided for making things out of water hyacinth, which was given primarily to NGOs. But when you talk about subsidy, what do you mean exactly by subsidy? That needs to be understood.
I would like to add one more thing for information, which may perhaps clarify the situation. You see, the funds are available in various places in various forms. Not that the funds are not available. Manegra is one such thing. And the second thing is that when you really start a fish farm or a fish pond, I think subsidy is available from Fisheries Department. So I think as such for wetland, nothing is available. For specific items, I think the monies are available. And I think the Ministry of Water Resources also have some money available. And if you see that now we have got Har Ghar Jal Yojana, right? JJM. Now in this also money is available for conserving the sources of water. So I think all this is available, but the word and the emphasis on wetland is not very apparent and not very forceful. So I think these are some of the things where the money is available, but in various forms. So the question that Dr. Neelam Jairath has raised, which is very pertinent and nice, that subsidy for what? Now this is something. So as a subsidy for any specific wetland to conserve, I think it is not there. But I think some of the activities which relate to the wetland funds are available. And I think they are also given also very, very judiciously.
Participants are quite keen to ask more questions, so we will take another question. This will be the last question of the session. Vandana Malik is asking that how the people who are residing in cities can contribute in wetland conservation.
I think this is a very good question. Cities are globbling up wetlands because as they expand, the monster of expanding urbanization becomes, and the wetland becomes victims of, I should say, the real estate developers. And one of the very, very illuminating case is of Tamil Nadu, where we find that the electronic city or the kind of development has taken place in these wetlands, which were the support system of Chennai, is created and so on and so forth. And the flood came, and holding water for flood, the wetland was not available, and thus everything got flooded. And there was a complete, I should say, paralysis to the entire activity, which happens some 5 or 6 years ago. So I think we have seen in case of Bangalore also, Bangalore in Karnataka, where again the wetlands are being nibbled, and they are sometimes foaming, sometimes they are on fire, and some wetlands are on repeated fire. So I think these are the things where, on the other hand, wetlands in the urban setting have another and acquire a different and even more important economic consideration. If your house is facing wetland, the real estate value immediately jumps up. So closer to the edge of the wetland, higher is the value of the real estate. You go to Mumbai and you will see that near Hiranandani, we have got this lake near the IIT, and I think the prices are high of those flats which face the wetland. Because wetlands provide you relaxation. Wetlands provide you some kind of a solace. Wetland and wetlandscape provides you a very scenic and a very, very enchanting and captivating nature and very artistic landscape. So I think these are the things. And since the urban area is full of concrete, very monotonous, so going to a wetland, sitting there for a while, strolling around the wetland is very relaxing. And this can, and I cannot explain it or emphasize it any further. As you can see in Sukhna, hardly you get a place to park your car during the summer because everybody wants to use this amenity and wants to enjoy and relieve from the heat, as well as have some kind of, I should say, relaxation at zero cost, healthy relaxation. And I'm sure that many of you have gone to Chandigarh and you have seen the popularity of Sukhna Lake, which is not a wetland site, though it serves the human needs to a very, very large extent. Yes.
So Sukhna is a wetland.
Huh?
Is a declared wetland.
It's a national wetland, but not international wetland.
It's not a Ramsar site, but
yeah. When it is so useful to such a large community. So I think the Ramsar definition and all that is also something which is historical. And I think it is time to relook the whole thing.
Yes, sir.
Thanks a lot, sir, for answering the questions of this participants. And there's another question. Ma'am, can we take one more question?
Please ask, sir.
So,
For us, it's a privilege to have him here for as long as he can afford.
No, I'm available because
in fact,
I'm feeling little guilty that the technology didn't.
No, sir, please.
And
That's
I
okay,
admire and salute the interest of the participants who even the lunchtime are really with us.
in fact, I was mistaken. This was actually feedback. People, they are giving feedback about the session now. They are saying that it was a wonderful session. And thank you so much, sir, for such a great information on World Wetlands Day. And yes, I would like to inform everyone that we have put the feedback link in the chat box. Do give your feedback about this session after the session is over. So thank you so very much, sir, for enlightening us with your insightful presentation. And now it's time to propose formal vote of thanks. So I request Director Science City, Dr. Rajesh Grover, to propose vote of thanks. Please, sir.
Thank you, Kamal. And good afternoon, everybody. And I deem it a great privilege to propose a vote of thanks to our esteemed speaker and guests. We are grateful to Professor C.K. Varshney, Professor Emeritus and former Dean School of Environmental Sciences, Jawaharlal Nehru University, New Delhi, for acceding to our request and sparing his valuable time to deliver a special talk on the importance of wetlands for human welfare. Sir, you rightly said that wetlands have been thoughtlessly drained, and a concerted wetland conservation campaign is a need of the hour to conserve aquatic biodiversity and to ensure climate stability. And thank you very much, sir, for your enlightening talk and joining us and gracing the occasion. And I also express my gratitude to Dr. Neelima Jairath, Worthy Director General, Pushpa Gujarat Science City, for her words of wisdom at the occasion. Thank you, ma'am, for your moral support and presence and guidance in conduct of this webinar. We had a lovely audience today, and we appreciate their patience who remained associated despite technical glitches. I would like to convey our hearty thanks to all of them for giving an overwhelming response and interacting with our expert. I take this opportunity to extend my sincere thanks to all my colleagues at Science City, especially Dr. Bhalla, Ms. Kanika and Ms. Kamaljeet Kaur, for all their support to make this event a success. And in the end, once again, I thank you all. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir.
A bright future. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. And we'll keep on bothering you.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, all the audience.